have arrived. How fortunate, or perhaps, unfortunate. You see, in this world, stories do not always end as you expect. And I, Lady Sequoia, am the keeper of secrets, the weaver of tales both dark and beguiling. I've seen lifetimes pass in the blink of an eye and witnessed the rise and fall of empires. Yet still, there are those who seek to uncover what they cannot comprehend, to chase after what should remain hidden. But beware, for some stories are not meant to be told. Listen closely, dear audience, for the tales I shall unravel before you are ones of mystery, treachery, and fate. And who knows, perhaps it will be your own story that intertwines with mine. Ah, how dark the days were back then. How thick the shadows. The people of that village knew what it meant to be afraid. They had always lived with the dangers that lurked beyond their doors, but even so, they thought themselves wise. They knew the legends, the myths, and they held tightly to the belief that their faith alone could keep the monsters at bay, but they were wrong. This is the tale of a boy named Ichiro, a boy who bore witness to things no one should ever have to see. Ichiro was 10, young and brave, with a spirit unbroken by the hardships of his village. His eyes were sharp, his mind sharper. Yet even he trembled when he first saw the creature. It was on a misty morning, as he walked alone by the riverbank, collecting reeds for his family's mats. He hummed a quiet tune to himself, the kind of melody children hum when the world feels safe. But that morning, the air felt too still, too heavy. The usual songs of birds were absent, and the distant rustle of leaves was muted, as if the very earth was holding its breath. Ichiro paused, a sudden unease prickling the back of his neck. It was then that he felt it, a presence, watching him from the edge of the river. He turned, and there it was, lurking just beneath the surface of the still water. At first, he thought it was just the reflection of a tree branch or a shadow, but then it moved. Slowly, almost deliberately, the shape rose from the water like something emerging from the depths of a nightmare. It was unlike anything Ichiro had ever seen. Its eyes were round, unblinking, black as night, and they gleamed with a sinister intelligence that chilled him to the bone. Its skin was slick and dark, glistening with a vile wetness, as if it had been pulled straight from the deepest part of the river. Atop its head, it wore a small basin of water, the source of its power, rippling slightly with each subtle movement. Its fingers were long and grotesquely sharp, curling and twitching like claws, its entire form impossibly still and yet impossibly alive. Ichiro's heart pounded in his chest, the blood in his veins turning cold as the creature's gaze fixed upon him. He knew, with a deep, primal certainty, what it was. A kappa. A demon of the river. It was said that they dragged children into the depths, where the water was so cold, so dark, that no one could ever return. Ichiro's breath caught in his throat, and for the first time in his life, he understood what true terror felt like. He turned and ran, not daring to look back, his footsteps heavy with dread as the creature's eyes burned into the back of his skull. That night, as he lay in his bed, he could still feel its gaze, could still hear its faint, eerie whispers in the wind. His dreams were twisted, filled with the sound of rushing water and the terrible wail of the kappa's screech. No one would believe him. No one would listen. But Ichiro knew what he had seen. He told his parents, of course, desperate for someone to take him seriously. But they only dismissed him, shaking their heads and telling him it was just a bad dream, just the stories he'd heard from the elders. His grandmother, the one who had whispered tales of yokai by the fire, smiled weakly and ruffled his hair, her hands trembling slightly. "Don't worry, little one," she said. "There's no such thing as a kappa." But Ichiro saw the fear in her eyes, the way her smile faltered for just a moment, and he knew that even she was afraid. But they were too frightened to confront it. too afraid to believe that something so monstrous could be lurking so close to their homes. Days passed, and the village grew quieter, its people more restless. The children began to vanish, one by one, without warning, without a trace. Each night, a new family would huddle together, mourning the loss of a child. And each night, the whispers grew louder. They spoke of a shadow in the river, a shape that followed the children, that took them when they wandered too close. But still, no one would look at the water. No one would speak its name aloud, for fear that even uttering the word would summon the demon, but Ichiro could not ignore it. He could not forget the eyes that had burned into him, the claws that had twitched with hunger. He could feel the creature's presence, stalking the village in the dead of night, its hideous form casting long shadows across the moonlit ground. The adults were too afraid to act. Too paralyzed by their own terror to do anything. Ichiro, too young to understand the cowardice of those around him, could not look away. He watched. He waited. He studied. And every night, he returned to the river, knowing that he had to learn its ways if he were to have any hope of stopping it. He learned its habits, its movements. He saw it at night, dragging the limp body of a child from the shore, its eyes gleaming with malice as it disappeared into the depths. Ichiro's stomach churned, and for the first time, he felt true fear claw at his heart, but he also felt something else. A burning resolve. He knew he could not let this continue. He could not let the creature keep claiming the lives of innocent children. And so, with the same calm determination he had learned from years of survival in a village that knew fear, he began to plan. It wasn't just any creature. No, Kappas were cunning, intelligent, they could speak, make bargains, even trick you into thinking they were your ally. But Ichiro had also learned their weakness. That small basin of water, perched precariously atop their heads, was the source of their strength. Without it, the Kappa was weak, vulnerable. If Ichiro could somehow make the creature spill its water, it would be rendered powerless. And so, Ichiro gathered his weapons. Not swords or spears, but cucumbers. Kappas, as it was told, loved cucumbers above all else. And so, Ichiro soaked the cucumbers in rice wine. Thick and potent rice wine. Enough to dull the beast's senses, enough to weaken it. Make it sluggish. That night, when the village was quiet, and the stars glimmered coldly overhead, he made his way to the riverbank. The river was shrouded in mist, the air thick with an unsettling stillness. The sounds of the world seemed muffled, distorted, as though the night itself was holding its breath. Ichiro could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him, could feel the beast lurking beneath the water, waiting. He clutched his bundle of wine-soaked cucumbers tightly, his small hands trembling with fear and anticipation. He took the first step into the shallow water, his heart pounding. The mist clung to his skin, the air biting at his face. Every rustle of the wind, every snap of a twig in the distance felt like a threat. His breath came in short, ragged bursts, the world spinning around him. But he kept moving, step after careful step, until he reached the water's edge. He cast the first cucumber into the shallows. It landed with a soft splash, and for a moment, there was silence. Then, from the depths, he saw it. The Kappa's eyes, gleaming like two dark, endless pools, rose slowly from the water. Ichiro's breath caught in his throat. The creature was watching him, staring at him as though it knew he was different, knew he wasn't like the others. It was waiting for him, too. Ichiro cast another cucumber. This time, the Kappa didn't hesitate. It lunged forward, snapping the cucumber from the ground with a hungry, greedy bite. Its sharp teeth sank into the cucumber, and the demon paused, its eyes glazing over for a moment. Slowly, sluggishly, it reached for another. And another. Each cucumber, soaked in rice wine, was like a drug, dulling the Kappa's senses, numbing its hunger. It was working. The creature's gaze grew unfocused, its movements slower. Ichiro's heart raced as he saw the perfect moment. The Kappa's basin of water was trembling slightly. This was it. This was his chance. With a battle cry, Ichiro lunged. He knocked the Kappa off balance, his small body colliding with it with all the force he could muster. The basin tipped, the water spilling out onto the ground, and in that moment, the Kappa's strength began to fade. It screeched, a terrible, high-pitched wail that tore through the night. The sound was like claws on stone, like the scream of an animal cornered, but Ichiro didn't stop. He grabbed a stick, one he had sharpened himself, and struck. Over and over, he drove it into the creature's chest, the Kappa's claws raking at his skin, trying to tear him apart. But Ichiro did not relent. Fear surged through him, but he pressed on, determined to stop the nightmare. His stick sank deep into the Kappa's flesh, each strike accompanied by the demon's sickening shrieks. Finally, with one last, desperate cry, the Kappa's body went limp, sinking into the water with a final, gurgling breath. And then, there was silence. The river was still. The creature was dead. Ichiro stood, panting, drenched in sweat, his small body trembling with exhaustion and fear. The village was safe, for now. But Ichiro was different. He had faced the darkness. He had stood against it when no one else had the courage. And as he walked back to the village, his heart heavy with the weight of what he had done, he did not look back. For he knew that there were many more shadows in this world, and only the bravest dared to fight them. Now, little ones, let this be a warning, the rivers are not always as calm as they seem. And sometimes, it takes a child, someone brave enough to be afraid, to stand against the darkness that others choose to ignore. For in a world of demons, the innocent must sometimes wield the fiercest courage of all. Let me see. I last told you a story of bravery, right? Now let us have a story of romance. Such things come in delicate whispers, carried by the wind and hidden in the folds of time. In the distant past, a warrior's journey began as a tale of honor, bound by duty and sharpened like his blades. Yet the heart is a strange thing, and no vow, no code, no mission could keep him from returning to the fox demon whose beauty and kindness had forever changed him. When he first awoke in her forest, it was her voice that greeted him, soft and soothing like the rustle of leaves. She called him a brave one, and tended to his wounds with herbs and gentle touches, each a balm to his pain. Though her heart was bound to the ancient magic of her kin, there was in her an understanding, a depth of compassion that defied her otherworldly nature. She asked for nothing, expected no gratitude, and only sought to give healing where it was needed. The young warrior, who had spent his life in shadows and silence, found himself drawn to her presence. Her laughter was the first sound of joy he'd heard in years, her voice the song he had never known he longed for. They spent days in each other's company, sharing meals and stories. She, curious about the human world, asked him endless questions, and he, captivated by her purity and grace, answered each with sincerity. And so, the seeds of love were planted, roots growing deep within his heart. When the day came for him to leave, he felt a strange ache within his chest. He looked at her, and the words came unbidden, "I shall return to you." It was a promise, a vow as unbreakable as the night. He didn't know then how deeply it would be carved into his spirit, how those words would carry him through each battle, each mission, each hardship in the years that followed. Decades passed. The warrior became a legend, respected, feared, and yet his heart remained tethered to the promise he had made. He had grown older, his face lined with wisdom, his hair touched by silver, but his love was as fresh as spring. The forest called to him in his dreams, and he knew it was time. He returned, retracing the steps of his youth, the once familiar path now dappled with memories. The trees seemed to recognize him, bending to let him pass, their leaves whispering like old friends. And as he reached the heart of the forest, there she was, the fox demon, waiting, her beauty untouched by time, her eyes as warm as he remembered. She looked upon him, her expression tender, for she knew in an instant all that he had endured, all that he had carried. With gentle hands, she traced the lines on his face, each mark a story, each wrinkle a testament to the life he had lived. She saw not the age, not the weariness, but the heart of the man who had once pledged himself to her. They say that night, under a sky blanketed with stars, the two sat beneath the old tree. The fox demon spoke of the stars above and the magic that kept them alive. The warrior, though his years were many, felt young in her presence, as if he had been reborn, as if love itself had erased the years between them. For 3 days, they remained together in that forest, sharing their lives, each word a bridge, each glance a memory relived. And when it was time to part once more, they did so with peace, knowing that love, true love, need not fear time. To this day, it's said that if you walk through that forest on a pale moonlit night, you may hear the whisper of a fox and the laughter of a man. Their spirits linger, as bound as they were in life, and if you listen closely, you may hear them repeating their promise, a vow as timeless as the moon itself. Listen closely, my children, to this tale woven from the threads of sorrow and healing, of love and guilt, and the deep bond between two souls. I call this story The Samurai's Sorrow and the Little Boku. It unfolds long ago in the misty hills of ancient Japan, where a retired samurai named Tsuyoshi lived, haunted by memories of battle. Tsuyoshi had once been a warrior of great renown, respected by allies and feared by foes. Yet his heart was burdened by the harsh memories of conflict and loss. The battles he fought had left his dreams painted with dark, troubling visions, and each night he relived the clash of steel and the echo of cries. Though he survived, he was haunted by his past, with no family to share his life's burdens. He thought it best to bear his troubles alone. But fate has its own plans, doesn't it? One day, Tsuyoshi took in an orphan boy of about 6 named Hiroshi. With hair dark as night and eyes filled with wonder, Hiroshi was still untouched by life's hardships. The boy was lively and observant, sensing the sadness within his grandfather, even if he couldn't yet understand it. Tsuyoshi, for all his strength, struggled to open up, fearing he might pass on his pain. And each dawn, young Hiroshi would hear his grandfather's murmurs echoing through the quiet house, forgive me, as if he was seeking peace from unseen spirits. Hiroshi didn't understand the sorrow that weighed down his grandfather, but he felt a deep compassion. Each day, he watched the old man, hoping for a smile or a gentle gesture. But Tsuyoshi's face remained solemn, and his hands stayed still, believing he could not share his burdens without causing harm. One day, as Hiroshi played at the edge of the forest near his grandfather's home, he stumbled upon a curious creature, a round, furry little being with an inquisitive snout. The creature blinked at him, and Hiroshi tilted his head, both puzzled and delighted. He had never seen anything like it and thought to himself it must be a hamster. Thrilled, he gently carried the animal back to his grandfather. "Grandfather," he called, his voice full of hope. Look what I found. Can I keep him?" Tsuyoshi frowned at first. He was a warrior, not a keeper of pets. But then, he noticed a glimmer, a spark in Hiroshi's eyes that stirred something in his heart. After a long pause, he nodded. Hiroshi had found his first friend, someone to share his days with. To show his acceptance, Tsuyoshi went to the swordsmith and commissioned a small, finely crafted cage with delicate ironwork and a golden latch. It was as fine a home as any pet could hope for. Hiroshi was overjoyed, and every night he and Tsuyoshi would sit together, watching their hamster, as they called it, exploring its new surroundings. The little creature seemed curious and intelligent, sniffing around the house as if it understood every corner. They were fascinated, and through this new friend, grandfather and grandson began to share gentle moments, slowly building a bridge between their hearts. But neither Tsuyoshi nor Hiroshi knew that this hamster was no ordinary creature. It was a boku, a yokai, a mystical beast that feasts upon nightmares. Every night, while Hiroshi slept peacefully in his own bed, the boku would slip from its cage and quietly find its way to Tsuyoshi's bedside. There, it would rest upon his chest, its small, warm body seeming to melt into him as it devoured the darkness that plagued his dreams. For the first time in 6 years, Tsuyoshi slept without nightmares. When he woke, he felt different, as if a weight had lifted from his chest. And there, upon his heart, lay the boku, curled up in peaceful slumber. The old samurai's heart swelled. He didn't know what had happened, but he felt lighter, a sense of peace creeping into his soul. Each morning after that, Tsuyoshi would wake refreshed, the torment fading from his mind like morning mist. His heart grew lighter with every dawn. The fear and guilt that once kept him from his grandson began to dissolve, and he found himself reaching out, gently patting Hiroshi's head, allowing himself, for the first time, to feel the love he had kept buried. And so, day by day, the love between grandfather and grandson grew, like a sapling reaching for sunlight. Tsuyoshi began to play with Hiroshi, to share laughter and stories, the pain of his past softened by the mysterious peace that filled him each night. But then, as Hiroshi grew older, an old maid who had served Tsuyoshi's household for many years whispered a secret into his ear. "That creature you call a hamster, young Hiroshi, it is no ordinary pet. It is a boku, a yokai that feeds upon nightmares. Your grandfather's peace is owed to that creature, which has taken his dark dreams each night so he may rest." Hiroshi was stunned but understood that this was no accident, no coincidence. It was a gift of peace. The maid warned him to keep this truth from his grandfather, for should Tsuyoshi know, his bad dreams may return, and his heart may again bear that heavy sorrow. Years passed, and as Hiroshi became a man and trained as a samurai, his grandfather passed peacefully in his sleep, his soul no longer burdened by the weight of his sins. Hiroshi, now a warrior himself, found the old cage in the house, a little worn but still beautifully made, with the memories of those quiet years held within its delicate ironwork. Taking it with him, Hiroshi returned to the very edge of the forest where he had first met the boku. Standing there in his armor, with his grandfather's spirit in his heart, he opened the cage and released the boku back to the world it came from. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. "You gave my grandfather the peace I could not. For that, I am forever grateful." And with that, the boku blinked once, seeming to understand, before it disappeared into the shadows of the forest, like a dream fading at dawn. Hiroshi stood there, bowing deeply in respect, before he turned back, carrying his grandfather's memory with him. "And so, my children, remember, some spirits walk among us unseen, bringing peace to the broken, light to the grieving. And perhaps, if you are open-hearted, you too may someday find a boku to ease your burdens and bring you peaceful dreams. May peace follow your dreams, and may you wake with a spirit that touches the clouds. Good night."
Under moons pale night she dances sly, flashing nine tails, weaving secrets nigh. Through torii gates the ancient spirits sigh. In shadows deep the fox-faced figure hide. Eerie eyes aglow, creatures whisper thin. Among bamboo leaves night stars to spin. Traditional rooftops where whispers begin. She holds the blade with a mischievous grin.